This conference will now be recorded.
And also, it'd be lovely to see your faces. So if you could turn on your cameras, that would be great, just so we can gauge some participation during this presentation. All right, let's get started. That's you. Yeah. All right, so this is our practice-based coaching overview, and the first thing we'll talk about is what is coaching.
It's just a little slow. It's warming up.
All right, so coaching is a form of development in which a person called a coach supports a learner or client, sometimes called a coachee, and you'll hear us call you guys coachees during this entire process, in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance.
So I believe it was in 2017 that the Office of Head Start added a new standard that included coaching as a training and professional development strategy that was required to be implemented at all sites. The standard basically states that coaching should be individualized. So it's individualized per staff based on needs and strengths. It's intensive, meaning that it is going to be tier-based, so depending on the needs again, and that will also result in the number of times and the frequency that coaches come to visit you. It's sustained, which means it's going to be consistent throughout the year, and context specific, so that we come into your classroom, which makes the most sense, so that we can work together to build on your practices that you're actually using in the classroom, and that it also be focused. So it'll be very specific. The goals that we set together will be very specific. And also that it be used as a professional development tool and not something that is punitive in any way or evaluative.
Okay. We have a little like a lag here in our slides moving forward.
There it is in the corner. That.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So here at Children First, we use a professional development strategy called practice-based coaching. And as you can see, it's a cyclical process that's encompassed by collaborative coaching partnerships. And that is the basis of all of our interactions. We have to start building a relationship together between the coaches and the coachees before we start working through the three components of practice-based coaching. Those three components are shared goals and action planning, focused observations, and reflection and feedback. And all of those work together to provide effective teaching practices.
Okay. So the overall purpose of practice-based coaching is to help you guys as educators improve upon and develop your effective teaching practices. We don't come into your classrooms to target specific children, to work on, children's behaviors. We work very closely in coordination with comprehensive services for that purpose. You guys might be able to see that Ariane is on here this morning. We work with Ariane, we work with Jane, and the other special needs coordinators. And we're super excited that we're actually having a more formal plan in place for that this year. And so we will help you learn and develop the teaching practices that you need in order to manage your classrooms. Okay, so we don't necessarily as coaches come in and target specific children. You'll have Ariane and you'll have the special needs coordinators for that, but we will know, okay, like what is happening in your classroom. We will give input and feedback to comprehensive services. We'll be there to support you with those particular challenges, but our job is to come in and to help you select goals that are going to help you develop effective teaching practices that you can carry with you for years to come. So if you go to a different classroom, if you go, should happen to leave children first one day and go somewhere else, our hope is that you will take these skills that you have learned with you. So once you learn them, they're yours to keep. So a little bit about effective teaching practices. I can't get them to move forward. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I want to get them all up on the screen. And there we go. Okay, so effective teaching practices encompass a very wide range of skills and strategies. And as educators, you adapt those skills and strategies to the age of the children in your classroom, to the developmental level of the children in your classroom, to their individual characteristics. You also have to take into consideration the family and the cultural contexts of each child that is in your classroom. Effective teaching practices are also grounded in the caring relationships that you are going to nurture with each child and family. Okay. They are designed to foster development and learning for each child across all of the developmental domains. Teaching practices themselves include things such as how are your schedules and routines carried out during the day? How do you set up your classroom and manage your classroom? And then how you address the challenging behaviors of any of those kiddos in your classroom. Teaching practices and interactions are responsive to and build on each child's pattern of development and learning. So that's where the individualization piece comes in for each child in your classroom. And last but not least, teaching practices can be measured by the classroom assessment scoring system, otherwise known as CLAS.
So as an overview of the cycles of practice-based coaching, there are 3 cycles that we work with you through. The first is shared goals and action planning. That's where we're going to look at a needs assessment. You're going to prioritize some goals that you would like to work on. We're going to work together to set those goals for coaching. We'll pick one very specific goal to start, and we'll create an action plan that's going to guide us through the next steps. We will, in that action plan, also identify some steps that we need to take in order to reach our goal. We'll review and update the goals and action plan throughout the coaching partnership. The second part of the cycle is the focused observation. So once we have established a goal, we've set up our action plan, you as the teacher in the classroom will get to tell us when to come in to observe, when you feel like you will be practicing that goal. So we'll come into the classroom, we'll observe only on that specific goal, we'll record our information. The notes that we take from that observation are collected and shared with you. And then we will move into the next cycle where we're going to come in to share some feedback on the observation. We may also and everyone make sure that they're muted. There we go. Okay. So we'll come into the classroom, well, preferably out of the classroom, where we can meet with you one-on-one, and we'll discuss the feedback, things that we observed, anything that we might want to share with you at that time, get your input as to how you're feeling the observation went, and then we'll discuss what our next steps will be. Most likely that's going to take us right back to that goal and action plan, where we might decide to try another time of day, or a different way to implement that goal.
I just want to say also, if you have any questions at any point, you can just, unmute yourself and jump right in. Okay, so what I'm going to talk a little bit about now is the different tiers of support. So tiers are basically levels, and PBC is based on a pyramid 3-level layer of support. So tier 1 classrooms are those classrooms where you have a probably more experienced teacher, someone with years of teaching and professional development under their belt. And so typically teachers like that will have higher level classrooms, will score at a higher level on their class assessments, and those classrooms will fall into that tier 1. If you're a tier 1 classroom, you will be seen by your coach once a month. And then you will also have contact with your coach throughout the rest of that month, via email. They might send you some resources. If you ever need anything or have any questions, you can reach out to us via email during that month. But typically our tier 1 classrooms are teachers who are a little bit more self-sufficient and don't need as much one-on-one in-person support. Then building upon that, we have our tier 2 classrooms. So our tier 2 classrooms are at a little bit of a level where they need some more support. So typically this is a classroom who scores anywhere in the mid ranges on their class assessments. It could be, someone who's had a few years of experience, under their belt, but they need more one-on-one support, in-person support from a coach. So any classroom that falls within the tier 2 would see their coach twice a month or bi-weekly, okay? And so what that means is during that month, you would have 2 observations and 2 coaching sessions with your practice-based coach. Then our tier 3 teachers are those classrooms that we would visit weekly. So those are classrooms that need a little bit more support. It could be a newer teacher. It could be a teacher that's struggling with a particular dimension of the class tool. And so her class scores placed her in that particular tier. And so you would see your coach weekly having 4 observations a month and 4 coaching sessions a month. And it's the Head Start program performance standards is what states that we need to have a tiered level for coaching. And the purpose is that we want to make sure that no matter what level you're on, you're getting the proper amount of support. Okay, so it doesn't mean that if a classroom falls into a tier 3 that they are lacking in any way. It just means that what's going on in that classroom at this moment, they're in need of more support. We have classrooms who start out a school year at a tier 3 and move through the pyramid by the end of the school year and might end up as a tier 2 or a tier 1. We also have the reverse happen, where classrooms start off as a tier 1, and then depending on your kids this year, the behaviors you might have, maybe you have a new co-teacher who's new to children first, and there are so many different circumstances that could affect what happens in a classroom. So it could be that a classroom starts off at a tier 1, and then through coaches' observations, through class results that we typically get in the month of October, a classroom might have to shift from a tier 1 to a tier 2 because we find out that they're in need of a little bit more support. And we do that because we want to make sure that you're consistently getting the correct level of support that you need in your classroom, okay? So tier 1 monthly, tier 2 bi-weekly, and tier 3, you will see your coach weekly, okay? We came up with our criteria for our tier 1s, 2s, and 3s, okay, from the results we got from our federal review a couple of years ago, as well as our most recent class scores over the 2020-21 school year, okay? So I know we have a lot of people who are new to the agency this year, and we're super excited about that, and we welcome you with open arms. And if you've never worked for a Head Start program before, this might be something that you're unfamiliar with. So as a Head Start program, we every 5 years go through our designation renewal. They call it a federal review. And at certain times during that 5-year grant cycle, we have visits from the Office of Head Start for a variety of reasons, okay? One of them has to do with class observations in our Head Start classrooms only, okay? At this time, early Head Start classrooms do not get observed during the federal review. So unfortunately, the focus is on our Head Start classrooms. So there is a quality threshold, is what they call it. A class quality threshold represents the Office of Head Start's expectation for all grantees. So this is nationwide. Every Head Start program in every state in the entire United States is held to this same standard, okay? So it's regarding the quality of classroom learning environments, okay? At this time, the Office of Head Start is saying that the quality thresholds for class in each of the 3 domains are as follows on the screen right there. So for the domain of emotional support, the Office of Head Start has designated a 6 as their quality threshold, meaning that that's the expectation that they want agencies to shoot for, okay? For the classroom organization domain, it's also a 6 out of 7. So just in case you don't know, the scale for class is from a 1 to a 7. For the instructional support domain, they're looking for a level 3 as the quality expectation. If a grantee receives a score below one of the quality thresholds, the Office of Head Start is going to come out and they will start providing support for quality improvement, okay, by connecting us to any trainings or technical assistance resources that align with the areas of improvement that we are in need of, okay? Now, a little different from that is the designation renewal system, okay? And these are the competitive thresholds. So the slide that we just looked at the first time of the quality thresholds, OHS is saying this is what we want agencies to shoot for, okay? This is best practice, 663. Then, as you know, there is a competitive threshold. The ruling was changed about a year and a half ago, maybe. It happened while we, shortly after we started being in like quarantine, right after COVID started. But we had gone through our federal review, and because of the scores that we got back, our agency nationwide fell in the lowest 10% for the classroom organization domain. Okay, so that is out of all of the Head Starts in the entire United States of America, we unfortunately fell at the bottom 10% for the domain of classroom organization. When that happens, okay, this is a year and a half ago, when that happens, a program goes into designation renewal, or what most people have heard it called recompetition. Okay, so that means as an agency, we have to recompete to keep our Head Start grant. Or any other agency or organization in Sarasota County also has the right to compete for the Head Start grant and become the Head Start agency for Sarasota County. That happened because we were like 1/100th, like ridiculous tiny, amount below the expectation for classroom organization, but nonetheless, it put us into recompetition. We were preparing to have to go through recompetition as an agency, and then they changed the ruling. So all along, agencies and programs have been talking about how that lowest 10% is kind of unfair, okay? Because we never know what is going to be the lowest 10%, okay? There are no numbers. It just depends on Florida, New York, California, Wyoming, okay, Iowa, every state in the United States, okay? After we all get our class observations done and they average them all out, that's when they find out what the lowest 10% is. So we never knew what scores could potentially put us in the lowest 10%. So they've decided that that was a little unfair. And lucky for us, they changed the ruling, okay? And we met the criteria for the new ruling, thus coming out of recompetition or designation renewal, okay? But we were there, and it doesn't mean that we can't be there again, okay? So we take that very seriously as an agency. So what we're looking at on the screen right now are the new competitive thresholds. So now we know the scores that we need to achieve in order to keep us as an agency out of recompetition, okay? And that is a 5 for the emotional support domain. It's a 5 for the classroom organization domain, and it's a 2.3 for the instructional support domain, okay? But you can see that little note there under instructional support. Typically nationwide, we all know the instructional support domain is the lowest scorer, okay? So they've started it off at a 2.3, but incrementally over the years, they're going to start raising the bar. So by July of 2025, that's the last day of 2.3 is going to be acceptable. As of August 1st, 2025, okay, so 4 years from now, the 2.3 is going to go up to a 2.5. Okay, so they've already put that out there, the Office of Head Start. And then it will continue to be raised as the years go by and the expectation gets higher and higher. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions about the quality thresholds or the competitive thresholds before I move forward? Okay. So then we are going to take a look at some of the scores. So what you see on the screen right there are our children first scores in the 3 class domains of emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support, okay? So for emotional support, we went through a class review from the Office of Head Start in 2019. These were our overall scores. So I believe it was 18 Head Start classrooms, all of the Head Start classrooms in our agency, I think but 1 that year, because there was a lot of changes with staff, went through the federal review class observations. They observe all of the classrooms, they take the average score of every single classroom, and as an agency, we are only assigned 1 overall score. And these scores are that result, okay? We do not get individual scores for individual classrooms. So unfortunately, we don't know like where people may have been, needing a little bit more support versus other classrooms because we do only get 1 score. So for emotional support, we got a 5.8047, okay? So in looking at that score and thinking about the quality thresholds of 6, 6, and 3, we currently were not meeting the quality threshold, okay? We are, however, meeting the competitive threshold, okay? But our goal is to raise that bar, support you guys to get that score at least up to a 6, which is the quality threshold, okay? For classroom organization, that was the domain that originally put us into recompetition. And my guess, knowing class the way I do, is probably because behavior management falls within the classroom organization domain, as does productivity, which you know houses transitions, okay? So transitions and behavior management are two things that can make or break a classroom. So we got a 5.3125. Which at the time when it was the lowest 10%, we didn't meet that, so we were put into recompetition. But now you can see we met the competitive threshold of a 5. We still do not meet the quality threshold of a 6. Okay, so again, that's our goal. Instructional support, okay, so for that domain, we got a 2.6721, okay, out of a 7. Again, typically nationwide lowest score. So, you know, it's kind of an expected score. We do, for this particular domain, meet the competitive threshold of a 2.3. We do not meet the quality threshold of a 3. Okay, so again, looking at, you know, how we can support classrooms through coaching so that we can raise our internal instructional support score. Okay, any questions about our scores in relation to the quality threshold or the competitive threshold? I know it's a lot of information to take in. But we want you guys to understand that this is the information that we use when we assign tiers to classrooms, okay? So that we can make sure that every classroom is getting the right level of support so that we can, you know, help you guys achieve those quality thresholds, okay? So the second chart on that page is the Office of Head Start class statistics for 2020. Okay, so we were reviewed in 2019, but there were other programs that were reviewed in 2020. The 21 scores have not yet come out yet. So for emotional support, okay, what we're looking at is the mean. Okay, so the mean is the average. Okay, so the minimum score for emotional support, that's the third column. Out of the agencies that were observed, the minimum for emotional support was a 5.42, and the maximum was a 6.42. But then the overall average, which is your mean, was a 6.03. Okay, so the Head Start agencies that were observed in 2020, the average score for emotional support, those agencies were typically getting around a 6. Okay, the average of those scores was a 6.03 out of 7. Okay, in 2019, we were at a 5.8. For classroom organization, the minimum score of the agencies observed in 2020 was a 5.06. The highest scores for classroom organization were a 6.56. Okay, taking all of the averages of the classrooms that were observed, the mean score for classroom organization was a 5.78. The year prior, we scored a 5.3125. Okay, so this just kind of helps you put into perspective where we fall, you know, into comparison of some of the other agencies out there. For instructional support, the minimum score was a 2.11, and the maximum score was a 3.88. The mean score came out to be a 2.94. Okay, the year before as an agency, we got a 2.6721. Right? Then in 21, I don't even know if they went out and did any class observations this past school year. So there may or may not be scores for 2021, because I know that the Office of Head Start put a lot of things on hold because of the pandemic. But this just gives you a little bit of insight as to kind of where we are in relation to the nation, in relation to the Office of Head Start expectation. And this helps us as the coaches know where we need to put our focus on, right? So it tells us, where we need to start and hit the ground running. Any questions at all about any of these charts thus far? Because what I'm going to do now is go into the tiering for all three age groups, for pre-K, for toddler, and for infant, okay? And like I said, we utilize this information as well as any classroom who had a class observation this past 2020-2021 school year. The majority of our classrooms were observed by our in-house observers. There were a couple of classrooms due to the pandemic and what was going on that weren't able to be observed. So we kind of utilized the data that we had if you were here previously, like the year prior, or in comparison to those OHS quality and competitive thresholds. So you will be told officially when you meet with your coach for the first time. If you don't already know what tier you fall into, we will let you know that, okay, when we meet for the first time. This is just giving you the overall picture of the determination. So how does a classroom become a tier 1 classroom? Okay, so again, remember the quality thresholds were 663. So in order to be a tier 1 classroom, you are a 663 or higher in each of the 3 domains, okay? Emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. To fall into a tier 2, okay, you are just under that quality threshold, okay, is what puts you into a tier 2. So that would be if you had an emotional support score anywhere from a 5 to a 5.99. Same thing for classroom organization, 5 to 5.99, or instructional support from that 2.3, which is the competitive threshold, to the 3, which is the quality threshold. So you can kind of see how we use this data to determine our tiers, okay? Then our tier 3 classrooms are any of those classrooms that fell under the competitive threshold. So remember, the competitive threshold for pre-K was 552.3. So anyone with an emotional support score from 4.99 or below, less, classroom organization 4.99 or less, and instructional support 2.2 or less is a tier 3, okay, to start. Don't forget, we're having observations in October. We'll get new class data on all of our pre-K classrooms, okay? And so your tiers may very well change either up or down. And the engaging interactions and environments that you see at the very base of that triangle is what our coaching focus is for this year. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Okay. So our toddler classrooms, Bridget and I sat together and looked at our overall agency scores, okay, to determine toddler and infant. So we looked at what were our highest scoring toddler classrooms to what was our lowest scoring toddler classrooms. And then we used that data to create the expectations for all of these tiers. We did the same with the infant, okay? So for our toddler classrooms, there are only 2 domains in the toddler tool. Okay, so for emotional and behavioral support, if you're 6 or higher, you fall into a tier 1. And then for the facilitation, if you get a 4 or higher in that domain, you are a tier 1. Okay, so monthly. Then for the emotional, for tier 2, 4.2 to 5.99, any classroom that falls in between, or a 2.6 to a 3.99 for the facilitation and instructional component, okay, domain, you fall into a tier 2 for the upcoming school year. And again, this was based on our internal class observations this year. So our highest scorers, we had toddler classrooms that got a 6 and a 4. And so that's how we decided that was going to be our basis. And then we, went from there. For a tier 3, anybody with a 4.1 for the emotional or lower is a tier 3, 2.5 for the facilitation or lower, okay, a tier 3. Again, when you meet with your coaches for the first time, we will let you guys know what tier you fell into. I think when we met with a lot of you giving your class feedback, we had already told you what tier you were falling into, but just in case you didn't get an observation and you didn't get feedback this year, we promise we will let you know when we meet with you for the first time. If you truly, truly, truly want to know and you can't wait, don't hesitate to email one of us and we can let you know, okay? Then we have our infant tool. And so the infant tool only has 1 domain, okay? And so if you are a tier 1 seen monthly, you got a 6 or higher, okay? Bi-weekly, which is your tier 2, you got a 3.66 to a 5.99. And then our tier 3s were anybody with a 3.5 or below, okay? And again, this was based off of our internal scores. So there were a couple of classrooms that got a 6, okay, for the infant domain. And so then we went from there, okay? And you can see the coaching focus for all 3 age groups is the same. It's engaging interactions and environments. Does anybody have any questions before we switch gears and talk about our coaching focus of engaging interactions and environments? If at any time you think of something, you guys know how to reach us. You can just shoot us an email and we'd be happy to answer your questions. All right, so I think it's Lauren.
Yes.
Who's going to be talking about our coaching focus for the school year.
Yes. So this year, our coaching focus is engaging interactions and environment. And we chose this because we are working hard to promote your teaching effective practices. And the foundation of all of that is engaging interactions.
I can't. Go.
All right, so we'll start with engaging interactions. And with your interactions, this can mean between yourself and the children that you serve, or the children with themselves, with their peers. And interactions are simply a back and forth exchange among those 2 people. And interactions can occur at every moment of the day, during arrival time, during lunchtime, even when you're doing diapering. Those interactions are very important, and we want to make sure that you guys are building strong interactions with the children. The second part of our focus is the engaging environments. Environments are where children learn and spend time throughout the day. So what would your environment look like? This includes the materials that you have in the classroom and how you're interacting with those materials. It also includes the books and the furnishings. Is your furniture too high? Can the children interact with what's on the shelf? or can they not reach it? Do they have access to it? It's how your room arrangement is. It's how it looks. Is it compatible with the children in your classroom? Or is it just a place where they can run free and there's chaos? That all affects how you interact with the children. Your environment also includes outside learning areas. What are you guys doing outside on the playground? How are you making it engaging for the children to learn? Are you doing a lot of nature play, or is it just the structures that you have on the playground that you're letting them go out and play with? As well as the staff placements in the room. Are you guys doing your zone defense and making sure that you're aware of where the children are? This is our main focus for this coaching year.
I just am going to interject for one thing. So outside learning areas are on there. Number one, because they're important and should be happening on every age level. But I want you guys to remember that for the infant and the toddler tool, if you are being observed by a class observer, they can follow you out to the playground. Okay, which means the expectation outside is that those high level of interactions are going to keep occurring. For pre-K classrooms, an observer does not observe on the playground, and that is strictly because of the number of children. And, you know, the volume gets a lot louder out there when there's a higher number of children and the children are more spread out, where our infant and toddler numbers are lower, so it's a little bit easier. So I just want our infant and toddler EHS staff to remember that you can be observed on the playground, and I don't know what just happened, so hold on. Okay.
And then again, this is just our focus and why it's important. When you guys are having those engaging interactions and you have an engaging environment, they support the children's involvement in the activities that promote positive development and learning. Again, this is the foundation to your effective teacher-child interactions. So we want to make sure that we are building these strong interactions.
Okay, so that moves us into planning goals and looking ahead to the, I can't even believe it, 2021, 2022 program year. I know, it came quick, didn't it? We'll start out with giving you all a needs assessment to complete. Our intention when we were initially going to be meeting in person was to do this together today. But what we will do moving forward is bring that with us and give it to you when we come out to see you the first time over the next couple of weeks. So the needs assessment that we give you is a way for us to gather information about your teaching practices and your feelings about your own practices. It really looks at like how often you use a practice, how well you feel you use it, how confident you may be using it, how much support you feel you would like to use. We ask that you complete this and then prioritize 3 of the practices that you would like to focus on initially. So when we come out in the next couple of weeks, like I said, we'll bring that. We'll also be bringing a coaching survey so we can get some information on your experience in the past with coaching, a learning style quiz, and then also like a little get to know you document where we kind of ask for ideas about things that you like, favorite yummy things or treats that you might like, things like that. This is to give you kind of an idea of what the needs assessment will look like. It has very specific practices listed, and then we changed the scoring of the needs assessment a little bit so it really matches up with class a little bit better. So the scoring goes from 1 to 7, where in the past I think it went to 5.
Correct. Yep.
Again, you're gonna kind of give yourself a rating of where you feel you're doing this. You know, how frequently, how much depth there is. You're going to answer, you know, how confident you are. You're going to ask yourself that, you know, do I want to do this more often? How much support will I need? And I'm not seeing the other sections, but I think that's kind of sums it up.
Yeah, so the last one that we changed to kind of align this a little bit more with class and MCI. We have some of our staff going through it right now. Those of you who went through it in the past will very much remember the 3 key words of depth, duration, and frequency. So we changed our scale from low to high. We used to be a 1 to 5, like Colleen said. We changed it from 1 to 7 so that it better aligns with class. And so the last one that we can't see on the screen because it's covered with the GoToMeeting thing is I would like to extend these practices. So thinking about that depth, duration, and frequency, you know, you would like to use them more often. I would like, is the frequency, I would like to extend them, is that depth and duration piece. So we want you to think about your goals in relation to that depth, duration, and frequency. Because it is our belief, just very much like at MCI, that you guys do all of these things, right? We're not going into your classrooms thinking that you don't do any of these practices, but we all do them on different levels. You may do one of them really well and be a 7, but on another one you're a 3. And it's not because you don't know how to do it. It might be because you don't do it often enough. It might be because you don't extend your interactions, you know, and get that depth and that duration there. So we kind of modified the scale for the needs assessment so that it better aligns with class. You'll also see this year that on the needs assessments, right now all you see are the class domains. So you probably see RSP there under a couple of these practices. So this is our pre-K one. So that's our regard for student perspectives. You'll see the BM is behavior management. After this PowerPoint was finished, we extended and also added on the ELOF, right, domains, as well as the Florida standards. So you'll see that all of these teaching practices not only connect to class, okay, they connect to so many other resources that we use.
There's an alignment between all of those different resources.
Yep.
So this is the coaching agreement. We ask that the coach, the coachee, and the supervisor all make very specific commitments. You can see all of those commitments listed there. Each participant signs this agreement prior to starting the coaching sessions. Going over your particular responsibilities, of course, it's going to be putting the safety of the children first, maintaining confidentiality. We're going to develop goals and action plans that we've identified together, that you're going to be a part of the scheduling and planning and facilitating of the practice-based coaching. That when we get together, that you're organized and prepared for our meetings, that you're respectful of each other. Can't really read that whole line right now. And plus my eyes are not great.
We go over these with you.
Yeah, we'll go over each piece for sure. I think one of the important pieces that I can't see actually again is the supervisor's commitment. And there was one added on fairly recently that really tied into the standard, where it talks about the supervisor, you know, making sure that they're providing support to you all prior to anything becoming punitive in any way.
Okay. All right. So then after we've had your initial coaching meeting and have discussed your needs assessment and we've gone over the coaching agreement, we'll pull out this lovely form called the action plan. And during this time, we'll discuss your needs assessment. And you guys will be able to pick out 3 specific teaching practices from your needs assessment that you want to work on throughout the year. And from that 3, we'll pick 1 to start with. And essentially what we'll do, we'll break it down. So when we're creating a goal, we discuss what time of day you would like to work on this goal, how you want to work on this goal, how it's going to look when you've completed this entire goal, and also with how many times or with how many children you want to practice this goal with. And we make your goals very small because we want them to be achievable. We want you guys to be able to meet your goals and meet the different steps of your goals. Also, while creating your goal, we'll talk about some steps to achieve it. And this could be very simple. If your overarching goal is, to have a seamless transition from outside to inside, we'll talk about, okay, what's going on during that time? What steps do we need to get there? Is it a simple, we need to get the kids to line up? That could be the overarching goal. Okay, well, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get them engaged enough to line up at the door or go wherever? So we're going to talk about the different steps that you need, and this will include some materials you may need, some resources we may send out to you through Teachstone or any other resources we find that may help you create that step and help you meet that step so you can work towards your goal. Goals should definitely be clearly defined and measurable, like I was talking about, and achievable within a specified time frame. You shouldn't have to work on a goal for the entire year, but if it does, we'll adjust it so it's smaller, so you can make some sort of progress so you can meet that goal. Goals provide accountability and allows opportunities to celebrate progress. That's what I was talking about with, if we do have a huge goal, we'll break it down and make it smaller just so you guys can reach your overarching goal. From your action plan, we will have focused observation. And like I said, when we're creating the goal, you tell us what time of day that you want us to come into the classroom. And that's what the coaches will follow when we do come in. And when we do come in, it's very focused, like the name is, focused observations. We're looking specifically at your goal. So we'll have that written on our paper, and everything that we write is relating to that goal. And typically, focused observations will take about 30 minutes, depending on what it is. If it's a transition, it may take a little bit less time, just because transitions are typically quick. But following your focused observations, we will go into the session called reflection and feedback. And over the last year, we've tried to do them virtually. It's not as effective as we'd like it to be. So some of you guys have known I'll come into the classroom because we'll have more engaging conversations that way. And what moving forward is also discussed in the coaching agreement. We want you guys to come out of the classroom and meet with us, typically for about 30 to 45 minutes to discuss the focused observation, what happened, how you guys feel about it, what the coach has noticed during it, and we'll talk about your progress towards the goal, and the different action planning steps, what you guys can do differently, what you guys have already accomplished, and moving forward. And this is also the point of where we do pull out that action plan in terms of if we need to change anything. So like I said, when we have to break down goals because it seems to be too large of a goal. If it's too large of a goal, we'll pull out the action plan and tweak it a little bit, just so it's meeting your needs of what you guys need to do next. And then towards the end of that reflection and feedback session, we'll make a plan of what you guys can do over the next few days to practice it in the classroom.
So this year, we will be moving away from the virtual format of reflection and feedback sessions. To truly follow the standards, they are supposed to be in person. They are supposed to occur during protected time for the coach and the coachees to get together outside of the classroom, which, does affect, we understand, managers and supervisors having to have coverage to make that happen. And we will work with you, as much as we possibly can. However, the virtual format for the reflection and feedback sessions was not very effective, like Lauren said, at the beginning last year. So we will not be utilizing Microsoft Teams anymore for reflection and feedback sessions. But we will keep them to 30 minutes in duration, partly because of, the effects of the pandemic that are still happening, as well as, keeping it to a shorter time frame so that it doesn't affect coverage for classrooms as much. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about is our timeline for practice-based coaching. This just kind of gives you a broad overview of what's going to happen over the next couple of months. So we all know that our first day of school is August 10th. We're currently going through our pre-service trainings. So once pre-service is over, throughout the remainder of August, the early childhood coaches will be visiting your classrooms. And we do that to meet new teachers, get acquainted with any new staff. We will be doing any informal observations to kind of gauge, are there any behaviors in this classroom? Are we picking anything up? I explained at the beginning, we're working very closely with comprehensive services. So, Ariane, I know, is going to be going in and doing some initial classroom observations as well, just kind of informally. We're going to come together, we're going to talk about those observations and really, formulate a plan of support for your classroom before coaching even kicks off. So this is something that's a little new for us this year, but we're really excited about it. We will also be coming around, like Colleen mentioned before, to give you your PBC folders. We will ask that you take a couple of days to complete your needs assessment, your coaching survey, which is going to let us know what any experience you've had with coaching previously, and your little questionnaire will be in there, and your learning style quiz will be in there, which kind of gives us some insight into what type of learner you are, so we know what types of resources are the best, to send to you. So we'll be dropping those folders off as well, and we'll be giving you a date for when we're going to come back and pick up those items, because what we do then is review all of the needs assessments, and again, we utilize that information to already start formulating, a plan of support for your classrooms. Class in action is new this year. So because of what happened with our federal review results, the agency wanted to be very proactive in our support of classrooms this year in regards to the class tool. We are coming into year 2 of our grant, which means that we could get class observations anytime after January 2022. So we are taking the time during pre-service, utilizing 6 days to complete 2 sessions of pre-K MMCI for any new staff or anyone that started last year, because we were unable to do it last year due to the pandemic. So we wanted to make sure that all of those people were able to get through MMCI and develop an understanding for the class tool. For our tier 1 and tier 2 classrooms, okay, we also still want to be there in support of you guys and your understanding of class. So we developed a training, Lauren and Colleen and myself, that we're calling Class in Action. It is mandatory. It is for all Tier 1 and Tier 2 classrooms. We are going to start on the very first day of school, August 10th, and it's going to run for about 8 weeks. You will be getting an email from us. It is going to be connected back to MMCI. So we will be utilizing those plans that you used to make at the end of every MMCI session of how to put class in action into your classrooms when you went back to practice. So you will, select a goal for every week based on a dimension. You'll practice that goal, and then we will meet on Fridays via Microsoft Teams because we're in different locations. So this is north, south, no matter where you're located, it's all Tier 1 and Tier 2 classrooms. So on Friday afternoons, Head Start, yes. So at the end of every afternoon, Friday afternoon, Colleen and Lauren and myself will get together with you guys and we will review how it went for you for the week and what were your successes and were there any struggles with this particular dimension, so that we can make sure that, yes, you guys know the class tool, but are you able to effectively put it into action in your classroom? Okay, and again, currently, this is for pre-K staff only. You guys are the ones that are observed during a federal review. Okay, then in the month of September, that's when our initial coaching meetings are going to kick off. And that is where the coach and coachees meet to discuss goals and complete your first action plan. These will be done in person. We will come prepared with your needs assessments, with your class results from last year if you have them, and we will take a look at your top 3 priorities, select your first goal, and create your very first action plan, so that you will already know that in October, when PBC kicks off on October 4th, exclamation points, you will already know what we're coming out to observe you for, okay? Also in October, pre-K class observations are going to be occurring. We are contracting with Teachstone. So Teachstone observers will be coming out beginning middle towards the end of October to observe all of our pre-K classrooms, okay, at this time. Early Head Start, you guys will be a little bit later on. And then again, like I explained before, we'll get that data. We'll see what's going on in your classrooms. Tiers may be adjusted at that point, and then we'll go from there, okay? So if you need to get in touch with your coach, and if you don't know who your coach is, you can just send any one of us an email and we will let you know if you are a brand new teacher in a classroom. Again, I'm Andrea Lowe's and I can be reached at alowe's@childrenfirst.net. Lauren can be reached at lwilliams@childrenfirst.net, and Colleen could be reached at kcarpenter@childrenfirst.net. Or if you run into any of us in the hallway, you can just say, hey, I have a question, can you stop? And we'd be more than happy to stop and chat with you guys. So are there any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns before we wrap up and say goodbye? I don't like that I can't see you guys. This is like so foreign to me. I hate doing things virtually. And I'm not that old. I'm really not. I just would rather see people in person. Okay, so I'm going to assume the silence means that there's no questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns. So we're going to wrap up. We really appreciate your time this morning. We thank you for coming on and being here with us. We are super excited to get coaching started this year and looking forward to working with all of you. So we will see you in your classrooms very soon. Yeah. You guys want to say anything? Other than goodbye? Ditto. Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
That's Arian.